For over 800 years, Parliament has been a place where history is made and decisions taken that affect the lives of everyone. Made up of the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the UK Parliament debates, makes laws, and challenges and checks the work of the government.
It was in Parliament that MPs called for the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, to stand with Poland after it had been invaded by Nazi Germany. It was in Parliament, after a bruising House of Commons debate on the 7th and 8th of May 1940, that Chamberlain was forced to resign as Prime Minister. This paved the way for the formation of a coalition government led by Winston Churchill. And it was in Parliament, after the fall of France in June 1940 and the evacuation of Allied forces from Dunkirk, that Churchill promised,
"We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender."
Parliament passed the laws which prepared Britain for the demands of total war, including for some, conscription into the armed forces. However, everyone felt the effects of the sweeping changes the war effort demanded, including the introduction of rationing, blackout and air raid procedures, and the evacuation of children from cities across Britain.
Now, one of the key roles of Parliament is to hold the government to account. But what happens when the three main parties are in coalition together?
As MPs and members of the House of Lords from across the political parties became ministers in Churchill's government, they were required to support the government line.
So how did this affect Parliament's ability to provide a check and challenge to the government? Did this mean that Parliament was irrelevant during the Second World War? Far from it. Parliament continued to play an important role. As well as enabling the government to pass the necessary legislation to deal with the war, it also allowed for MPs and members of the House of Lords to raise concerns and challenge the decisions of the government. In the House of Lords, Baron Wedgwood called upon the government to admit every refugee fleeing Nazi persecution, and George Bell, the Bishop of Chichester, condemned the policy known as area bombing.
The Area Bombing Directive instructed Royal Air Force raids to target not just military targets, but industrial centres, along with their civilian population. Meanwhile, in the House of Commons, at low points in the war, debates could be bitter, with pointed criticism of Churchill's leadership. In July 1942, there was a vote on whether the House had confidence in the central direction of the war. Churchill won the motion by 475 votes to 25, but not before Nye Bevan had wounded the Prime Minister with the remark that he wins debate after debate but loses battle after battle.
Parliament not only shaped the conduct of the war, but also directly felt its effects. MPs and members of the House of Lords served in the armed forces, and Parliament even had its own Home Guard unit.
Made up of MPs and staff of both houses, this undertook fire-watching duties and manned a gun at the exit to Westminster Underground Station. As the Blitz bombing campaign escalated across the UK, striking major ports, industrial towns and cities, the Palace of Westminster also came under fire and was damaged by air raids on 14 different occasions.
The greatest damage occurred during the night of the 10th and 11th of May 1941, at the end of the Blitz, when the Commons chamber was hit by bombs and the roof of Westminster Hall was set on fire. Firefighters told the senior MP present that it would be impossible to save both the chamber and the hall, and so the decision was made to save the hall and its 14th century roof.
The fear of Parliament being bombed while MPs and Lords were sitting also led to both houses meeting in nearby Church House between 1940 and June 1941.
At the end of the Blitz, members returned to Westminster, with the Commons meeting in the Lords' chamber and the Lords meeting in the robing room. Clearance of the bomb damage to Parliament began in May 1945. At Churchill's request, the Commons chamber was rebuilt to its original design.
But one part still bearing its wartime scars is the arch between Members' Lobby and the Commons, rebuilt using bomb-damaged stones as a permanent reminder of Parliament at war. Memorial shields in the House of Commons serve as a further reminder of the MPs killed in the war, and members of the House of Lords who gave their lives are commemorated in a memorial in the Royal Gallery. The war in Europe finally came to an end on the 8th of May 1945, with the surrender of Nazi Germany. though fighting continued in the Far East against Japan until 15th of August 1945. Just as Parliament was being rebuilt, so too was the country. During the war, the Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, called for the creation of a welfare state to combat the 5 giant evils of squalor, ignorance, want, idleness, and disease. To the poverty of the 1930s had been added the strains of wartime, with many British cities heavily bombed and millions of homes destroyed. Even though fighting continued against Japan for a further 3 months, the Conservative and Labour parties agreed that the coalition government should not be extended beyond the course of the war with Germany. And so an election was held in July 1945. While Churchill had spoken in 1940 of ensuring that the privileges previously enjoyed by the few shall be far more widely shared by the many, it was the Labour Party, led by Clement Attlee, that seized on this programme. Attlee's Labour Party won a landslide victory, securing 393 seats to the Conservatives' 213.
With this majority, legislation was passed that not only helped to rebuild Britain, but also created the welfare state, including the National Health Service. Parliament emerged from the war with its reputation at new heights. The parliamentary system of government had endured the trials of wartime, unseated Chamberlain, checked Churchill, and passed legislation that made fighting the war possible and helped secure a people's peace.